My fellow Americans,
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, and there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You've indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compelled. Well, okay, compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the President now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the Major's. The Major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the President have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let them in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
That I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we're still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's let Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It is molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
not. You can't get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth. You are the one.
Time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
won't admit the truth.
And you implying...
Senator Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hey everybody, welcome to Redacted on this Thursday. I'm Clayton Morris. She's Natali Morris.
That wasn't really it.
No, we're starting the show. We're starting the show because this damn bird has been outside of our studio for like the past week because like spring started now. So like this bird, which sounds like that. So if you've been hearing this bird, but it's like missing today. So I thought I would just do in the middle of it. I would do my own.
And now I hear the dogs. I don't want to hear that.
Now that Grover thinks there's a bird in the house.
Okay.
Welcome to Redacted on this Thursday.
I was totally tuning you out. Are we really going to do this now?
Yeah,
You
we're
have to
really
give
starting.
me-
We're really starting.
Now they know how I sit next to you most of the time like this.
She's just sitting there
you.
ignoring me. No.
Okay.
Until I start
Let's
talking. I'm
pretend
just going to
we
play
like
bird
each other.
sounds. I'm going to play bird sounds. Welcome. We've got a jam-packed show for you on this Thursday edition. I hope you're in a good mood because you're going to need to be in a good mood for the pile of crap that the government is slinging at you over the past 24 hours. We've got an update on what the Federal Reserve increasing rates means for your wallet and what that portends for the larger the summer and inflation over the summer and interest rates later into the year, what this means for gold, the U.S. dollar, all of that we will break down on the show.
Plus, we are going to give you a follow-up on the Nord Stream pipeline and a new report from Cy Hirsch saying that the government fed the story that the New York Times ran with and the media just picked it up like a good little doggy. We're going to break that apart because it does not inspire confidence in the mainstream media, if you had any.
And was Pfizer and Moderna, were they specifically falsifying data as it relates to vaccines in order to get them onto the market? We're going to look at the latest report on investigation on the falsification of tests in order to feed garbage to the government so that the government would allow these shots to come to the market. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Welcome to the Thursday edition. We hope you're doing well. Thank you for all of you who send in kind photos. Many of you sent in photos of your new T-shirts, of your your silence equals complicity. I keep thinking complicity equals silence. There it is.
But
Silence.
that's how an equation works, is that you can reverse them.
Ah, okay. So silence equals complicity T-shirts. So many of you sent in your shirts, and so photos of you. You can send them. If you get one of these on our store, please send them to us. photos@redacted.inc. We do have a community. We have a vibrant community. Thank you to everyone who's become a Redacted rebel. If you go to redacted.inc, you just sign up. And for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism and what we do on this show. And if you're on Rumble, you just click that big red join button and you join our locals community there. And again, just for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support what we do. You can also pay more if you'd like. You know, there's different tiers and all that we're working on. So totally up to you. But again, that's how you can support independent journalism. We are not backed by billionaires. Redacted.inc is the place to go. Yeah, we've got a lot to get to today on the show. And so let's start with the economy. Something very strange happened yesterday. We saw the Federal Reserve basically admit that a recession is coming. Run for the hills. You should start dumping the U.S. dollar, while at the same time telling us that U.S. banks are fine. Like the banking system is fine, but yes, we are heading for a recession. So basically speaking out of both sides of their mouths, we have some exclusive video of Jerome Powell as he was heading into this meeting trying to fix the U.S. economy. Take a look at this video. So this is Jerome Powell trying to save the U.S. economy right now, really by just doing whatever they can to kind of shovel crap at things and hope that it will stick.
Well, we have to at least give him a little bit of empathy because he was in a no-win situation. If he didn't raise rates as they had planned to do, it would signal a crisis, precipitated by the loss of so many big banks. If he did raise rates, it would slow down an economy that's clearly in a crisis. So it was a rock and a hard place.
Perhaps, or you could say that they waited way too long, artificially keeping interest rates low in order to, and printing all sorts of fake money. So why?
Sure, but we're talking
this,
about the choices he had now, both of which were bad.
Yeah, now, right? But he's been Fed chair for how many years now? right? So he's been in this position for so many years. Like now, this is the accumulation of all of these bad decisions for years, which has precipitated this problem that we're currently in. So,
yeah, I mean, if I start like storing like open buckets of jet fuel in my apartment for years and years, I can't complain when it burns down.
Yes, exactly. Yes. You keep putting cardboard next to the gasoline in your garage. Eventually, something bad is going to happen. You probably noticed that something was going on yesterday, because if you looked at your retirement accounts, you may have noticed that it plummeted last night. The Dow collapsed 530 points on this news. 530 points after the Fed hiked interest rates. They hiked, of course, 25 basis points. So what exactly happened here? 25 basis points. What does that mean? This means that we're now at 5% interest, about 5% interest rate for the Federal Reserve, the benchmark rate. That's the rate at which everything else is tied to. Credit cards, everything uses the benchmark rate from which then to do all of their chicanery. Powell basically admitted yesterday that they didn't want to do it, but they wanted to keep their word because they promised they would do it, which is raise rates. Powell then admitted that what we've been saying all along is true, that a recession is coming or is already here. And he said it. He basically said these words. Here are his words, that, that basically it's already here, and that we are concerned about the tightening of this market right now. They released their numbers yesterday from their economic projections, which is basically their semi-annual book of projections. The Federal Reserve is now admitting that the United States, the GDP projections are lower, and there's likely not going to be any more rate hikes. That's basically what we're hearing. Now, we could, they're holding out the possibility that there could be additional rate hikes. But for now, that's basically it. In other words, we're done. We give up. We're throwing up our hands, and we're going to let the market now sort itself out, which many have argued for years is what should have happened. Let the market sort itself out. Let market forces sort itself out instead of being artificially propped up.
Which is something that Ben Bernanke really wanted to do during the 2008 financial crisis, and he was pressured into manipulating these rates when he really didn't want to. He believed in natural market forces, and once you do that, you can't really put that horse back into the barn in any kind of immediate way. So are we now circling back around to not only feel the effects of this financial crisis, but then feel the effects that we didn't feel from the 2008 ones?
Perhaps, as we're going to hear from Peter Schiff in a moment, who believes that, this is going to be far worse than what we saw in 2008. So
is this because businesses, like the biggest corporations, all can borrow money, and the biggest banks can borrow money at 0%, and now it's at 5%? Because we will go get loans and we pay interest no matter what. So now our interest rates are going to go higher. But are they just pissed because their interest rate is going up and they're going to have to actually pay something rather than these 0% loans that they always take?
Well, it will slow up borrowing quite a bit, and the economy is built on borrowing. And it will also slow up some of the free money that the government has been printing for itself. So when you think back just 3 years ago, when pandemic measures were put into place and the government was basically creating trillions of dollars out of thin air and giving it out to people as an incentive to stay home, well, there was always going to be a time when we all felt the cumulative effect of that, which is what we're doing right now. Right.
Yeah. And as interest rates go up, of course, it makes it more difficult for people to get those loans. It makes it more difficult for people to get home loans.
Yeah. And so now the people who felt like the pandemic stimulus was a big help to their checkbook, to their checking account, and experts were warning, you will feel this later because the cost of things will go up. So you may enjoy this $1,300 right now because that's going to be wiped away when inflation hits. No one wanted to hear that. No one listened, especially not, people who were saying $1,300 is not going to get me anywhere. I need more so that I could stay home. And when you really unpeel that onion, it was stay home, take this money. Yeah. Life's going to get harder for you. We don't have science around why you should do this, but we're going to tank our own economy for faux science and just stay there for a while. And then now we all have to suffer. I mean, that's just one piece of it. Of course, the war in Ukraine has exacerbated that. But we can't put on blinders if we did champion these stimulus packages for whatever reason because we thought it would slow the pandemic. It didn't. First of all, it didn't do whatever it was supposed to do, and now we all feel it together because everything's
so does that mean
expensive.
when there was zero? So if we got a loan personally, and let's say we qualified for 2% interest, now because they have to pass that 5% on to us, we would get the minimum we could get is 7%. Is that kind of how that works?
Yes. Yeah, I mean interest rates are right around for like a mortgage. You're like really about like 7% right now.
Like
yeah,
6.5, 7.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's all those people who got really favorable loans, sub 2%, you should thank your lucky stars for that and keep it if you can, because you're not going to be able to refinance into a better loan anywhere in the near future.
Well, if you look at the bond markets, and the people that study the bond markets very closely, these investors are the most sophisticated in the world. They're the smartest investors, and they're projecting a July rate drop. So this 25% basis points that we just saw could actually drop in July. And then another even rate drop in December. So if I was looking at the data today in the Fed Watch predictions for July and into the fall, we could see a rate drop. And we could see it drop back down to 4% in that, which could drop an entire point. That means the US dollar is far less valuable. So what you need to understand about this is that means the US dollar, everything was favorable about the US dollar. That means it's now money will flow out of the US dollar. And that's what you're seeing. You're already seeing it overnight. So investors will take their money out of the United States if treasuries are not as sexy as they were. If these bonds are not as sexy as they were. They're not yielding as high returns. And they're going to take them into other currencies, other markets, Chinese markets, European markets, wherever they can get better returns. And so what we will see, we're going to see gold. Gold is already touching around $2,000 an ounce right now, almost like hitting record highs right now for gold. Silver also going up. Real estate, value of real estate. We're going to see gold right now touching that 2,000 mark. And Peter Schiff back in the fall nailed this prediction. He said inflation is going to get a whole lot worse. And he was right about that. And he yesterday said, buckle your seatbelts for even higher inflation this year. And now add on to that record high credit card debt that Americans are sitting on right now, like we've never seen before. And he said this is a financial crisis, even though the media is for some reason refusing to call it a financial crisis. Listen.
That we have record high credit card debt and the banks are failing. It's not a coincidence that both the borrowers and the lenders are broke. The reason for that is the Fed. The Fed kept interest rates artificially low for more than a decade, encouraging people to go deeper and deeper into debt and banks to extend them the credit. And now that they're forced to raise interest rates, something that was always going to happen, they have created another financial crisis, which is something I've been warning about for years. And, the media is reluctant to call this a financial crisis. They keep saying it's a banking crisis. The financial crisis of 2008 was a banking crisis. Nobody wants to say what it is because they don't want to evoke memories and comparisons to 2008. But this is a sequel to 2008. And like all sequels, this one's going to be worse.
It is interesting. Why won't they call it a financial crisis? Is it because Biden's president right now?
Well, we saw this last year when we saw 2 quarters of GDP loss, which is supposed to be the definition of a recession. And the government then went and released press releases saying we're going to change the definition of a recession.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it very much is a public relations campaign.
So you have the Fed.
You don't have to go.
Sorry, go ahead, guys.
I was going to say, you literally just have to listen to Jean-Pierre, because she will tell you this is the best economy. Like, we're doing great.
Yeah.
Jobs are plugging along. Everything's great.
Yeah. Main Street is doing just fine.
Philip, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I just love that. It's my favorite government response to any crisis, anything like that is like, ooh, that word sounds really bad. It makes us look bad. Let's change the definition.
Right.
Let's just change the definition. It's not a recession because we just changed the definition of recession. This isn't it now.
Well,
we're good.
How many definitions have been changed under the Biden administration? We've changed woman, we've changed vaccine, we've changed, like, all these definitions just keep changing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's called moving the goalpost, So there you have it. The Fed saying basically we are in a recession, which we've all been saying, admitting as much with GDP projections much, much lower. And again, the U.S. dollar, people jumping out of the U.S. dollar. So we'll keep our eye on what this looks like over the next couple of weeks. And there are still a lot of stress tests. Oddly, the FDIC kind of put on hold this auction for SVB Bank. Like they were Silicon Valley Bank, they were supposed to like put it up for auction, and they suddenly, like in the past few hours, like stopped themselves from doing that. So there's some real weird funkiness going on right now in the markets. But you got to protect yourselves. We got more news to get to here on this Thursday. We're going to look at the cover-up of the Nord Stream pipeline. Seymour Hersh out with a brand new bombshell report on the Nord Stream pipeline. We're also going to be speaking with Dan Cohen about the latest on why President Biden is flying to Canada today to meet with Justin Trudeau, pushing for an invasion of Haiti. That's one of the things on their agenda. So that's important as the U.S. economy teeters on collapse. He's going to Canada. So we'll look at that. But first, just talking about gold a second ago, right now, experts are predicting a recession. It's here. And now we had the Fed chief yesterday saying GDP our projections are much lower, and basically admitting we are in a recession. Whatever the Biden administration wants to label it doesn't really matter at this point. So if you're interested in investing in gold, which is about to hit record highs right now for gold prices, Natali and I are huge investors in gold, big believers of that, and silver, and real estate, like actual tangible assets that the government doesn't control. Right now, you can actually start purchasing precious metals or converting a part of your IRA or 401k into a gold and silver IRA that you control. Wall Street doesn't control it. It's a self-directed IRA that you control. And Lear Capital can help you get set up with it today by calling 1-800-613-3557. That's their 800 number. Just write that down and call them, and you get on the phone with them. They can talk you through like what it looks like to invest in gold, whether you want to store it, store it in a safe, or how you want to do it. You can get the gold coins, the silver coins, and all of that. They'll give you a precious metals investor guide so you can decide how you want to do it and just learn a little bit about it. Again, it's free, 1-800-613-3557, or visit LearRedacted.com. And right now, actually, if you buy an ounce of gold, they're doing this through the end of March, I believe, the end of March. If you buy an ounce of gold, they're giving you a free ounce of silver. So that's free money, just getting free silver when you buy an ounce of gold. So really, really great. Anyways, their 800 numbers, 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com.
All right. Well, did the media swallow a whole load of crap and try to pass it on to you about the U.S. involvement in the Nord Stream pipeline? Seymour Hersh, journalist who has been covering this extensively, says this is exactly what happened, that indeed the CIA and German intelligence created this whole hogwash cover story and handed it to the media, double-spaced, just exactly what they wanted you to ingest, and that the media ran with it. Here is the report that is out today. Now, remember, in February, Hersh published this bombshell report accusing President Joe Biden of personally ordering the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline, which was a gas source from Russia that was set to deliver affordable energy to Germany and all of Europe. A few highlights from that piece. He said that the U.S. had worked with Norway and used the Navy in order to subvert congressional approval. We've covered this extensively. We believe it's very credible, and it absolutely makes a ton of sense, especially when you recall that the U.S. warned that it would not allow the pipeline to go forward. And then the same U.S. official, Victoria Nuland, who said that, did a victory lap about it after it was destroyed. Watch.
Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, high five about that. The
largest terror.
It was a biological disaster.
Yeah, and it was a terrorist attack. It was the largest ecological terrorist attack in world history. And we're okay with that. The Green administration of the Biden administration that cares a lot about CO2 emissions and everything else, was really concerned about the large amounts of natural gas and methane that they just put into the atmosphere.
Right. It's such a comical clip because she's like, I'm glad that incidentally happened.
Yeah.
I don't know how it did.
How'd that happen?
But wow, that really worked in my favor. Now, the Hersh report was widely reported abroad, but deliberately ignored by the U.S. media. In fact, when German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited the U.S. a few weeks ago, the media didn't even ask him about it, even though Germany was to be the recipient of oil from the pipeline. And the Hirsch piece says the U.S. didn't want Germany to have affordable energy because it is part of a concerted effort to hurt the German economy. You would think Germany would at least have a stance on that, or want to investigate or something. But instead, all CNN did was ask Chancellor Scholz about the war in Ukraine.
It is very difficult to judge what will be the next things to happen in Ukraine, but there is something which is absolutely clear. We will continue to support Ukraine with financial, humanitarian aid, but also with weapons.
But if this continues for years, Ukraine as a country will be destroyed. Its economy is already down 40-50%, depending on what estimate you look at. Is there a point at which you have to start negotiations, and is there a deal to be had where, Ukraine gets some kind of security guarantees from NATO, perhaps EU membership, and in return it accepts the reality that it is not getting Crimea back, it is perhaps not getting some parts of the Donbass back?
There will be no decisions without the Ukrainians. We will not take decisions instead of them. We support them.
But should they? Would you encourage them to take these decisions?
So we told them that they can go for membership in the European Union, and they are working to make progress in all the criteria that are important for this. I think they know that we are ready to organize a certain way of security guarantee for the country in times of peace to come, but we are not there yet. And to my view, it is necessary that Putin understands that he will not succeed with his invasion and his imperialistic aggression, and that he has to withdraw troops. This is the basis for talks. And if you look at the proposals of the Ukrainians, it's easy to understand they are ready for peace, but there must be something done, and this has to be done by Putin.
All right. So he's echoing all the talking points of President Biden, even though there must be a seed planted in his head that, wow, this guy Biden, he may not have my best interests at heart and the interests of the German people, but he's willing to go on American media and regurgitate all of the Biden administration's talking points, including by saying, yes, my people in Germany are hurting from high energy prices, and we're cool with that because it's okay to tank my own economy to support this war. Now, here is a summary from Hirsch's piece about just how much it has hurt the German and European economy to not have this oil that they had intended. This is from a source named Sarah Miller, an energy expert and an editor at Energy Intelligence. The quote says, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines in September led to a further surge of natural gas prices that were already 6 or more times pre-crisis levels. Nord Stream was blown up in late September. German gas imports peaked a month later in October at 10 times pre-crisis levels. Electricity prices across Europe were pulled up, and governments spent as much as 800 billion euros by some estimates, shielding households and businesses from the impact. Gas prices, reflecting the mild winter in Europe, have now fallen back to roughly a quarter of the October peak, but they're still between 2 and 3 times pre-crisis levels and are more than 3 times current U.S. rates. Over the last year, German and other European manufacturers closed the most energy-intensive operations, such as fertilizer and glass production, and it's unclear when, if ever, those plants will reopen. Europe is scrambling to get solar and wind capacity in place, but it may not come soon enough to save large chunks of German industry. And by many accounts, solar and wind will never replace that level of industry. The calculations just don't really work. To which no one asked Chancellor Scholz about that affordable energy that they were planning on. And we knew at the time during that visit a few weeks ago that this was intentional. They did not allow any free-form questioning. The president and the chancellor didn't stand side by side and ask questions the way that we saw just this week President Putin and President Xi do. They will do that with President with Justin Trudeau
Yeah.
when Biden goes to see him later. They did do that with the president of Mexico, but this one, no, is totally tight-lipped for a reason. But discussions of the pipeline did actually happen in private. Here's what he said, is that after this meeting with CNN, it was known that the chancellor had flown to Washington with no members of the German press, no formal dinner, and the two world leaders were not slated to conduct a press conference as routinely happens in such high-profile meetings. Instead, it was reported that Biden and Schultz had an 80-minute meeting with no aides present for much of the time. There have been no statements or written understandings made public since then by either government, but this is Hirsch talking. He says, I was told by someone with access to diplomatic intelligence that there was a discussion of the pipeline expose, and as a result, certain elements in the Central Intelligence Agency were asked to prepare a cover story in collaboration with German intelligence that would provide the American and German press with an alternate version of the destruction of Nord Stream 2. In other words, in the words of the intelligence community, the agency was to pulse the system in an effort to discount the claim that Biden himself had ordered the pipeline destruction.
Pulse the system, pump it with garbage, pump out a fake story.
To, poop out a disinformation.
And of course, then, I mean, I know you might get to it, but then, yeah, well, there you go. And I was going to say, then we saw this right away, right from both the German press and the American press.
Right. So right on cue, the media acted like a good dog and picked up the bone that they were given and went with this story in the New York Times on March 8th. Intelligence suggests pro-Ukrainian group sabotage pipelines, U.S. officials say. Now, a lot of us saw right through this at the time. Philip said, how can we not know who it is but know their ideology? Right? That's strange.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good point. Like, you know, this person likes strawberry ice cream. Who is it? I don't know.
But we don't know who that person is.
But somebody.
But you just know they like strawberry ice cream.
Right.
They're pro-Ukrainian?
Yes.
AKA the CIA?
Now, a source admitted that this was a false flag story to Seymour Hirsch. This source says it was a total fabrication by American intelligence that was passed along to the Germans and aimed at discrediting your story. This is someone saying this to Hirsch, saying, yeah, you touched a nerve. We had to then work defense to distract the public from your truth bombs. The disinformation professionals inside the CIA, to which we know there are many, understand that a propaganda gambit can only work if those on receiving are desperate for a story that can diminish or displace an unwanted truth. So this is to say that the media themselves do not want to believe that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. They don't want to believe that. There's a cognitive dissonance there. He says the truth is that President Joe Biden authorized the destruction of the pipelines and will have a difficult time explaining away his actions as Germany and its Western European neighbors suffer as businesses are shuttered amid high day-to-day energy costs. And it seems that the reporters from the Times knew this, at least one of the reporters. There were three of them, one of them named Julian Barnes and two of them named Adam. So we're just going to call them Adam and Adam. That he went on a podcast, Julian Barnes, recently, and was asked about it by the host named Michael Barbaro. And here are the transcripts. And the reporter, Julian Barnes, is saying, you know, in the beginning, this quote, he says, you know, all those states we went through, did Russia do it? Did Ukraine do it? We were just hitting dead end after dead end. We weren't finding officials who were telling us that there was credible evidence pointing at a government. And so my colleagues, these Adam and Adam, we started asking a different question. Could this have been done by non-state actors? And the host is like, huh. And he says, yeah, some group of individuals not working for the government. And the host feeds him this, like freelance saboteurs. Where did this new question take you? And he goes along saying, you know, at the end, yeah, my initial thought that this could be pro-Russian saboteurs turned out to be wrong. We don't know why turns out to be wrong. We learned that it was most likely a pro-Ukrainian group, to which then later in the podcast, he concludes that, you know, look, we know very little. This is mysterious to us, but also to the U.S. government officials that we spoke to. They know that the people involved were either Ukrainian or Russian or a mix. and they are not affiliated with the Ukrainian government, but we also know they're anti-Putin and pro-Ukraine. The host asks another question at the end. You see, he says, well, the intelligence right now is saying that we're not. So while officials are telling us that the president of Ukraine and his advisors didn't know, we can't be certain that that's true. So he's saying here at first that he and his fellow reporters, Adam and Adam, came up with this idea that it was a non-state actor all on his own. Like, oh, that was just our idea, that it maybe was not a government. And then later he admits, but it's the government that told me that it was not a government. And it was freelancers, freelance pipeline blower-uppers.
You can find them in the yellow pages.
Right. You can
We need a
Google that.
pipeline blown up.
Yeah.
What page is that?
Like they did a Google search, like who blows up pipelines freelance.
Super Mario Brothers. Okay, let me call those guys, see
Right.
if they can help.
Is the pipeline warp zone?
Right. It'll take
Get
you
to level 8.
It'll take you to level 4. Like just
These are just not the actions of a Ukraine hating group. No way.
No, they're pro-Ukrainian.
Yes.
Yeah.
But can we just talk real quick about the handing of this? And by the way, former FBI 25-year veteran John D'Souza, who we had on the show, said that it was well known within the FBI and the intelligence community, if you want a story to get out, you fabricate it and you hand it first to the New York Times, and then, the Washington Post, etc. But first is the New York Times. And who was the first to publish this garbage intelligence BS cover story?
Right.
The New York Times.
Yeah.
Right? And they handed it right to them. And then, of course, the Germans run their version of it like a few days later.
Yeah.
Confirming.
Well, remember,
it's unbelievable.
We have that interview with the CIA agent at the countdown in our countdown timer that talks about how for Cuba, they manufactured things to make people think there were, what do you say, babies dying in incubators or whatever. And it was completely fabricated. There was no truth to it whatsoever. They fed it to a newspaper, and that newspaper feeds it out to and then other media organizations pick it up. And that's how they spread this stuff. This is like CIA 101.
Pulsing the system, right? Pulsing the system.
But the difference in that, though, was what he was, I think it was John Stockton. What he was describing was like feeding it to the newspapers, and the newspapers didn't know. And so then other newspapers would pick up the story and run it, and that's how they did it. In this case, now the newspapers are complicit.
Yeah.
They know. They were just handed the story by the CIA. They don't even pretend that they have somebody in there feeding it to them. They just walk in with their CIA badges, hand them the script, and say, "There you go," and they run with it.
And they're like, "Cool, I don't have to report it now because you gave it to me."
Well, that's like what we covered here on the show last week with Dan, which is Operation Mockingbird is alive and well. And back then it was hidden. So the newsrooms didn't know that they were being fed garbage stories, right? They didn't know that Deep Throat was actually feeding them these stories, right, or whatever. Now they're complicit, and they're on the payroll, and they're in the newsrooms with them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And I mean, I think as evidence for that, especially with the Seymour Hersh story in the pipeline, that was like a month ago that New York Times published that, right? That where they found out that it was a pro-Ukrainian group. Have they done any follow-up? Did they actually release? Did they release anything about who it was that did it?
No, I haven't seen any updates on this story.
Because they've stopped. They've stopped investigating because they didn't investigate to begin with.
Because there was no investigation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's no journalist covering this beat in that newsroom. They were just handed this story.
Well, and we also, thanks to the Twitter files, we saw how much money Twitter made, or the Twitter files that Twitter made from the government. Like, nobody's like, where did that money come from? What was it for? This is just for work that we did.
Right. Censoring people. So the FBI felt because the work was pretty onerous that the FBI paid Twitter money to do that censoring. So, Seymour Hersh is the only journalist really fully doing this coverage.
And, these kind of stories are putting a fine point at the pivotal inflection point that we are at right now, because we know now, like most people accept that Iraq was based on a lie, that most wars have been based on a lie in the last 40 years. And then for some reason, we continue to swallow government narrative around the current situation, because either you don't live in Europe and you don't care that they don't have affordable energy, or you continue to want to have a Ukrainian flag in your bio because it fits this virtue signaling that you think that is important for your social avatar. But if we don't admit that previous wars are based on a lie, and then we somehow think, oh, but this one probably isn't, then it's extreme naivete on our part And then you're right, we're being complicit to not at least, at this point, the assumption should be that most things are lies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And, when we start to dig into these stories, we don't go in saying like, okay, where's the bullshit here? It just comes to us.
Yeah. And we have to take a shower after all the bullshit. That's what we feel like. Well, we hope that you enjoy our show because we do a lot of work on it and we work hard to bring you value. So if you do, please smash that like button. It really helps push us further out in the algorithm. I know I can see like just a few thousand of you have pressed like so far. So please do us a favor. If all of you watching right now would actually hit that like button, it would push us further out and maybe more people would be informed about what's actually happening in the world. So please do that. Please hit that like button. We've got more news to get to here. We're going to look at why President Biden is going to meet with Justin Trudeau and pushing, among other items, for an invasion of Haiti and trying to get the Canadians to do it. Do our bidding, Canadians. It's unbelievable. So Dan Cohen will be here on that story. We're also going to look at a new report about Iraq and civilians being killed at the hands of the British government. We'll dive deep into that. Plus, we're going to look at Pfizer and new allegations about faking of vaccine data in order to get their information, their products on store shelves. But first, attention. Are you an investor looking for an easier way to trade stocks? And would you like 17 free stocks? With Moomoo, my favorite trading platform, there's no steep learning curve. It has a simple interface and it's easy to use, so even beginners can take advantage of the stock market in no time. Plus, it offers powerful tools, often reserved for experienced investors, like customizable watch lists and advanced charting capabilities. And now Moomoo even has a powerful new earnings calendar, so you don't have to hunt and peck trying to find earnings schedules for your favorite companies. Right now, for a limited time, Moomoo is giving away 17 free stocks when you open your account and you make your initial deposits. Even if you never do anything else with the account, you get to keep those free stocks. Moomoo has zero commission trades, and the app looks amazing on every platform, from iOS to Android to Windows and Mac. Moomoo can help you trade with its advanced tools like their stock screener and their earnings calendar. So no matter what your skill level is, you'll find fantastic tools that can help you trade. Open your free Moomoo account today. Get access to zero commission trades and 17 free stocks when you open your account and make your initial deposits. So to learn more, check out our link at redacted.inc/Moomoo. That's redacted.inc/Moomoo. Well, the Biden administration is getting set to push for an invasion of Haiti, and it's ramping up full steam as President Biden flying to Canada to meet with Justin Trudeau. Among the agenda items is that invasion of Haiti, trying to push Canada for their troops or forces to fly into Haiti so that I guess the United States doesn't have to do that. Meanwhile, the United Nations also separately trying to justify an invasion of Haiti because of human rights abuses, they say, in Haiti. To make sense of all of these moving pieces, we want to bring in Washington correspondent for Redacted, Dan Cohen. Dan, good to see you. So why is President Biden flying to Canada in order to push for this quote-unquote invasion of Haiti?
Well, ever since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, the U.S. has planned for a military invasion of Haiti. Basically seen, there is an armed movement that is growing and uniting neighborhoods called the Revolutionary Forces of the G9, led by a former police officer named Jimmy Cherizier, nicknamed Barbecue. And of course, we at Redacted have covered the story of Haiti and the G9 intensively, and you can see our reporting from back in November when myself and my colleague Kim Ives were on the ground reporting. But the pressure is really ramping up now. We saw this statement from, well, first we have the headline from the Washington Post, which completely confirms it, that there is a military intervention in the works. The U.S. very much wants it. And now we have a statement from the United Nations High Commission on Human Rights, and its spokesperson, Maria Hurtado, here's the exact quote from her. She says, "We call on the international community to urgently consider the deployment of a time-bound specialized support force under conditions that conform to international human rights law," et cetera, et cetera. So That's pretty remarkable to me to hear this from the UN High Commission on Human Rights, calling for a military invasion of Haiti, especially knowing the horrific history of what previous foreign invasions, whether by the United States or UN so-called peacekeepers, have wrought on Haiti, from rape of Haitian women and many fatherless children to massacres to this kind of thing. So Biden is going to Canada to meet with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Thursday, March 23rd. He's heading out there, and apparently he's going to be putting some kind of pressure on Trudeau to carry out this intervention. And there apparently is some kind of hesitance from Trudeau to get fully involved in Haiti. 2 weeks ago, on March 9th, Canada's top general said that the Canadian military is actually stretched thin, and that it does not have the capacity to carry out this military intervention in Haiti because of what it's doing in Ukraine, essentially for the United States. Now, Canada has already sent multiple shipments of armored vehicles to Haiti. Those armored vehicles were instrumental back in November when I was on the ground in Haiti in overcoming the barricade that Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier and the G9 had put on the Vera fuel terminal. And they had done in order to basically resist US and IMF imposed fuel price hikes. Canada has also sent further shipments of armored vehicles. They've deployed military surveillance aircraft and naval ships to patrol Haiti's coast. And even the Canadian military firm Incus, which manufactured those armored vehicles, ran a troll farm in order to gin up support for an invasion. And that's something we reported exclusively here at Redacted. So all of this, and the Canadian government says it's stretched thin over Ukraine. And according to Colin Robertson, who's vice president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and is a former high-ranking Canadian official who had posts inside the United States, he says to Reuters, quote, "The Americans, I think, are reaching a point where they are getting fed up." So on one hand, I have to wonder, is it sort of theatrical because there's really no daylight in general on foreign policy, in particular between the Canadians and the Americans? But then again, it may be that the Americans are really trying to push the Canadians to get in line to carry out this invasion, because the Americans, the Biden administration, knows that any American flag that is planted down on Haiti is going to be totally rejected. The Haitians do not want any foreign invasion, and especially an American invasion of their country.
It's an amazing moment, right? When there's this maybe self-awareness now that we're trying to push our imperialism onto other countries to carry it out on our behalf. But I do love the response that you just mentioned from the Canadians, or at least the reports about their involvement in Ukraine is why they're stretched so thin. Because according to the reports I've read from the Global Affairs in Canada, there are only 24 deployed officers in Ukraine as of early 2022, and how many more since then? 24 soldiers. So Canada's army and military is stretched thin because of 24 people in Ukraine. Somebody's not telling the truth.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit fishy. I don't know. I mean, maybe Biden's gonna go there and pressure Trudeau to ramp up military spending. Like get up to that. All the NATO members have to spend at least 2%, and I don't think Canada is there. So maybe it is. It's really hard to tell. Is this sort of theatrical, where it's Biden saying, "Oh, we really need you to go do this," and Trudeau saying, "Oh, well, I don't know. We don't want to be involved," and appearing hesitant, in order to kind of de-emphasize the overtly imperialist, aggression that would be this military intervention. I do think one of the interesting aspects is Haiti is totally awash in violence. Maria Hurtado, the UN High Commission spokesperson, on human rights spokesperson, cited the deaths of something like 500 people 500 Haitians at the hands of, because of gang violence, to justify her call for military intervention. But the thing is, much of this violence, particularly since January, has been perpetrated by a gang leader and his group named Clayton Innocent. And he's been the primary kidnapper this year and gang leader who's been clashing with the police, who's been killing innocent people. The thing is, he used to have a relationship with a political party called the Democratic and Popular Sector, which is led by a politician named André Michel. André Michel and his party are a mainstay of the de facto Prime Minister Ariel Henry's party, of his coalition, rather. So when the basically political appointments were handed out, this guy, Clayton Innocent, got shafted. He got the short end of the stick. He wasn't given essentially the political power he wanted, and so he's gone on a rampage ever since and become the most prominent killer and criminal in Port-au-Prince and pretty much in all of Haiti. But for all of this talk about gang violence and people being killed, the intervention is not aimed at him. It is aimed at one of his rivals, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, who is smeared as a gang leader, but is not a gang leader at all. And in fact, he's the only so-called gang leader that any of the Western press can go sit down and interview. And, like we talked about, we reported weeks ago, the AP can just show up at his neighborhood and demand an interview, and he even granted it to him. So this guy Clayton has been completely terrorizing swaths of Port-au-Prince. His men even overtook the neighborhood of Pétionville, which is the wealthy suburb or wealthy area above Port-au-Prince. It's almost like in Los Angeles, if gangs that were fighting in South Central in poor neighborhoods went and one of them went and took over Beverly Hills. So it is major. It is a major development that this happened in Pétionville above Port-au-Prince. But nonetheless, the one person who this is really aimed at, this intervention, is the guy who's under U.S. sanctions, EU sanctions, Canadian, UK, and UN sanctions. That is Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier. None of the other so-called gang leaders are under sanctions like him, and the U.S. has repeatedly directly threatened him. So there's a sort of irony of who the Biden administration wants to target or wants Canada to target on its behalf.
Well, we'll see. So President Biden in Canada meeting with Justin Trudeau. One of the agenda items is this invasion of Canada, or invasion of Haiti. It's also an invasion of Canada as well. We'll see if Canada bites on this and what sort of troops they will align and bring to Haiti, and what the United Nations does on this as well. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and thanks for staying on top of this story for us.
Thanks a lot, Clayton.
All right, so thank you, Dan. We really appreciate it. We've got more news to get to here on your Thursday. We're going to look at what's going on in Iraq with the civilian casualty report that's just seen the light of day. It's amazing how it takes us a few years to get to the bottom of it, the truth of these warmongers. We'll get there. Plus Pfizer and new allegations about Pfizer and BioNTech fabricating data and information in their vaccine tests in order to get those on store shelves. We'll tell you about that. But first, I don't know if you guys saw that Dr. Fauci documentary that was out there. And one of the things that they talk about is, wow, everyone can find Dr. Fauci's personal information. His wife was complaining about that. Well, that's because, everything's available on the internet these days. Personal email, legal name, home address, phone numbers, all that stuff, relatives information. So this information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, anybody else out there who wants to learn more information about you. That's why I'm excited about, to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. So you can use our link at aura.com/redacted to try it for 2 weeks to see how many data brokers are sharing your information. Also, you'll see the link in my description, or right there, there's a QR code right on your screen. You can scan that QR code that you can use as well. So, I mean, it was recently we had our Facebook account hacked and taken over, and it took us almost 2 months, I feel like, to get it back. And it's amazing the stuff and alerts that will be sent out to me. So with Aura, you'll get these alerts for things that are trying to get caught. They're trying to catch people in the act. And the other day, someone was like trying to break into a Twitter account that we have and I was like, and it said somebody in India just tried to log into your Twitter account. I was like, what? No, that wasn't me. I don't live in India. That's not me. So Aura is fantastic. They really find all of this stuff and will alert you about it. So let Aura do all the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with our link. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2-week period. So go to aura.com/redacted, and you can use that QR code that's right on your screen right now as well to start your free trial. And we'll also have a link in the description below for aura.com/redacted. All right.
Okay. Do you want to move to Rumble for this, or we're going to stay here for a little bit and then...
Yeah, do you want to move? Yeah, let's move over to Rumble now, shall we?
Okay. All right. So we're going to say goodbye to our friends over on YouTube. We're taking all of our subscribers and we're going to go over to a non-censorship platform. So we'll say goodbye to you. That ends our live show for the week. We'll see you back here on Monday. But to those Rumblers, stay put, stay right